anybody that thinks that gold is going to rise to just $3,000 and stop, I think is totally insane. I think a price of $5,000 is low for gold. Once it gets going, and once there's a rush to it, I just think it's going to blow right through 5,000. If it goes through 10,000, it's possible that fiat currencies could be in trouble at that point. Hi, everyone. I'm back with Ronni Stoeferle from Incrementum. If you didn't follow the last couple of parts, Incrementum is a company that has been producing an annual gold report called In Gold We Trust for many years now. And it's one of the most comprehensive reports on the precious metals market and just the general state of the global economy. Ronni, how are you doing?
Very well. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great. I want to just jump right into your report here. The chart book that you've got that goes along with the report is sort of an executive summary and an overview of the whole report that's very condensed. It's got a ton of information in it. I'm on page 23, and you've got a chart that is probably my favorite chart of all time. I've been presenting variations on this chart since 2006, and this chart was one of the key premises. You know, there were about 3 key premises of my book, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, and this chart was the number 1 premise of my book. I opened the book pretty much with it, and I closed the book with it. Originally, I was doing it in a linear format. This one's in a logarithmic format. Yes. But this chart shows the value of the gold reserves of the United States compared to the monetary base of the United States. For listeners that don't know, base currency is the currency in circulation plus reserves held at the Federal Reserve in the checking accounts that all of the commercial banks have to have for intrabank lending and such. The blue line at the top is the line of the base currency. If you could take these lines back to 1913, the inception of the Federal Reserve, you would see that they meet. But with the Federal Reserve, it became legal to lie. And basically, they were able to print. They had a 40% reserve ratio mandated, where they had to have 40% lawful money. And it said that on our notes. A Federal Reserve note said that it was backed up by lawful money and was redeemable in lawful money, which was either U.S. Treasury note, gold notes, or gold coin. It shows that they printed them. It exceeded the currency supply. In 1933, they made gold ownership illegal for Americans. And then in 1934, over about a month and a half period, they would unpeg gold and repeg gold, unpeg gold, repeg gold. And basically, it was international exchange rates changing. It was the dollar falling in value. People say that Roosevelt changed the price of gold. No, he didn't. The rest of the world was on a gold standard. There were still countries all over the world that backed their currencies with gold. What was happening is the US dollar was falling in value compared to those currencies and compared to gold. And it rose until the value of the gold at the Treasury matched the currency supply, the base currency that was circulating. And for a little while, we had more gold at the Treasury than currency in circulation leading up to World War II. But then throughout World War II, we kept on printing. And then it's sort of the currency supply as after World War II ended, sort of leveled off for a little while. But then the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Johnson's Great Society. Meanwhile, countries all over the world started redeeming US dollars for gold. And so the gold supplies in the United States fell by almost half. And it was Charles de Gaulle of France that really started a lot of that redeeming of gold. And then Nixon was forced to take us off of the gold standard in 1971, and gold just exploded, and the will of the public and the free market again. The first time, most gold analysts will say, Roosevelt changed the price of gold. No, that was the market doing it. This was the will of the public and the free market again. The bidding the price of gold up until the number of ounces held at the Treasury exceeded the value of all of the dollars that had been printed from Roosevelt to Nixon, or to Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter. And there was several months here where the U.S. could have gone back on the gold standard, and we did not take the opportunity. It is such a shame. One of the things in the charts that I use, I also incorporated outstanding revolving credit. And the reason I did that is because I consider it phantom base currency. When anybody goes into a restaurant and makes a charge, or at the supermarket or whatever, on their credit card, if they don't pay off the balance at the end of the month, those dollars that were created with your signature remain in circulation. Whichever dollars you don't pay off do not get extinguished, and they remain in circulation, and the merchant's checking account can't tell the difference between cash base currency that you could have paid them and this outstanding revolving credit. And what's amazing is when you add that to it, for a couple of weeks in 1980, it also covered all outstanding revolving credit. And I think in your report here, it says that it would require a gold price of $12,600 to cover base currency today. And I think that when you add outstanding revolving credit to that, it comes out closer to, since they've done some quantitative tightening and withdrawn some of the base currency, it was, I believe, $40,000 or $42,000 per ounce gold to cover base currency plus outstanding revolving credit. It would probably be around $35,000 or $40,000 today. But this is an amazing chart. It was the premise of my book, and I just love this chart. Have you got any quick comments on this one chart here, because it tells such an amazing story?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry, Mike, but we should have credited for you as the source of this chart idea. It is something that we really like, to show the long-term potential of gold. And we should not forget that we have never have the world's monies been so long cut off from their metallic roots. So, of course, through every round of quantitative easing, this monetary backing got weaker and weaker, and actually this shadow gold price became higher and higher. And I think it's, putting out such numbers, we are calculating 12,600 to cover the whole current monetary base, but we could do the same like you just did. I think it's a very interesting concept. We could do the same with M3, M2, you name it. But it just is important to show those long-term charts and to tell people, okay, well, we're living in the exception of the rule. And back in the days when, Paul Volcker stepped in, and he was heavily influenced by John Exter, and we're having a large chapter about John Exter and his Exter's pyramid in our recent gold report. I think the fact that the price of gold was so high, and that basically the whole US monetary base was covered more than 100% with gold, that was one of the main reasons why the world gained confidence in the US dollar again. Because I wasn't born back then, but I've read many articles about it.
There was a panic going on. There were lines developing in front of every coin shop. People were panicked, and the dollar had only been a fiat currency since 1971. So we're talking a little over 8 years. It was 8 years and just a few months that the dollar had been a fiat currency, not backed by gold. And the dollar really backed all the world's currencies, because the series of world wars and then the Bretton Woods system put the world on a standard where all the currencies were backed by US dollars and US dollars were backed by gold, because we had 2/3 of all the world's monetary gold. And so people don't realize how close we came to the dollar being a fiat currency collapsing during that period of time.
Yes. And people tend to forget that the US actually issued treasury notes and bonds denominated in Swiss franc terms and in Deutschmark terms, because people didn't want to have US dollar denominated bonds.
Wow.
So, and I think this clearly shows that there wasn't any trust left at all in the US dollar at some point. But they managed it quite well, we have to say. But we might be on the verge of another currency crisis going forward. And as you've said, it can go pretty quickly, within a decade. I think that's actually not too long in regards to world reserve currencies. And I think, the whole de-dollarization topic that we're also describing is really picking up momentum at the moment.
Yes, it is. This looks like you're using either monthly or quarterly data in here for the value of gold. The 1980 peak, the first peak, if you plug in 850 for that month, which was
Yes.
the high, you'd see that the first peak sticks up a lot higher than your dashed line. And it does cover that outstanding revolving credit, which does act like phantom base money. To say that it doesn't would be to say that if credit cards replaced all cash in circulation, that the gold price would have to be calculated as zero. So I really do believe that it's going to, a lot of people will say, well, we need like a 40% reserve ratio. I'm sort of on record as saying gold standards suck. Gold is great, but a gold standard is just a way of cheating gold once again and starting this whole scam over again, where they print notes that are a promise to pay gold, because they always cheat on those. So the next chart on page 26 is another way of looking at the chart that we opened up with, my favorite chart. It is simply the percentage of gold backing that the dollar could have if we went back to backing just our base currency, which is not, that's a small portion of the currency supply.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know this, but most dollars are not created by the government. The same thing with most euros or any country that has an advanced banking system. The currency, most of it is created by the banking system, not the government. The government and their central bank work in partnership by swapping IOUs to create the base currency, which is the currency in circulation, which used to be just a few percent of the US currency supply. It's much larger now since all of the QEs and so on. But this chart is what percentage of the dollar could be covered by gold. And what's interesting is if you look on the left-hand scale where there's a 100% line, you've got the median in here of 43.1%, but twice in the past, and this again was the will of the public and the free markets and just a rebalancing of the economies around the world. But if you drew a line across here at 100%, you'd see that in the 1930s and early 40s, the value of the gold of the treasury exceeded the currency supply by quite a bit, almost 40%. And then it was more than 120% back in 1980. So you can see that we could have gone back on the international gold standard in 1980, and it's a shame we didn't take that opportunity. But I believe that, governments around the world had all become addicted to deficit spending, especially the United States. And you can't do that when you're on a gold standard. It comes back to haunt you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just shows you actually how cheap gold is at the moment in monetary terms, and how much the whole monetary expansion made gold cheaper. So it is just another sign and another chart that clearly shows that we will at some point start this mean reversion. We're far below the long-term median, far below the long-term mean. So normally we should go significantly higher. And I mean, you can do the math.
I think we're going to go back up to that 100% mark again.
Yeah, probably.
When I show this chart, I always add outstanding revolving credit to it also. And it's a line that is halfway between the bottom of this graph and the line that you've got there now. So it shows that, right now, this chart, I'm guessing, is showing about 7 or 8% coverage of the currency supply. And when you add outstanding revolving credit, that would come down to maybe 4% or something like that. So gold has a long, long way to go. Anybody that thinks that gold is going to rise to just $3,000 and stop, I think is totally insane. I think a price of $5,000 is low for gold. Once it gets going, and once there's a rush to it, I just think it's going to blow right through 5,000. If it goes through 10,000, it's possible that fiat currencies could be in trouble at that point. Who knows where the price is? And at that point, you really have to stop thinking in fiat currency prices and start thinking about the purchasing power of gold. Yes. You have to price gold in how many ounces is your house worth? How many ounces is a barrel of oil worth? How many ounces is the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average worth? And when you start thinking about the value of things instead of the price of things, it really puts things in perspective. And when you compare this to long-term averages, then you can get a sense of where gold is becoming expensive, and you should actually be trading it for real estate or for stocks or something like that. So I think we're going to wrap that up. Have you got any other comments on this section that we've covered so far?
Well, I mean, I think it's no coincidence that we are at the moment seeing the highest central bank purchases since the year 1971. So I think that behind the curtains, there's quite a lot going on. Many countries are positioning themselves for some sort of a monetary endgame, from what I hear from some very, very large institutional investors. They're thinking about counterparty risk. So back in the days, they would have said, okay, let's buy a gold ETF. Now they say, we want physical gold. We want to have it stored outside of the country, outside of the banking system. So those are all little pieces that put together clearly show the big picture.
Okay, so we'll wrap that up. You know, the reason we're doing this video series is I love charts. I said that in the first episode of this series. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then one chart can be worth 1,000,000 numbers. And we're not done yet. There's more to this series. So if you're viewing this series, visit the link in the video description below and subscribe to the channel so that you get notified of the next video in this series, because there's a lot more to come. Thanks a lot, Ronni, for being here, and thank you for all you're doing for the gold community with all of the work that you do. So
thank you, Mike.
A lot, and we'll see you on the next call, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
goldsilver.com. Price match guarantee. Free shipping. Global storage options. Phenomenal customer service. Get the best-selling book, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, for free at goldsilver.com.